Hey guys, Tarke here, and I just wanted to remind you there'll be a Baeclast tomorrow on the stream. We'll be joined by Ziggy D, RiseQT, Octavian, and Grimro. Bit of a packed episode, I know. For some reason I thought Ziggy wasn't about, but it turns out he was about, and I need to have him because he's actually played the League mechanics. So, feels amazing, man. Again, that'll be tomorrow on my Twitch channel. There'll also be a link to the timer in the description. And I'll sort of go through the topics so you get an idea of what there sort of is to talk about. If there's anything that you think I've really missed out, then leave that in the comments. In terms of skill discussion, I'm purposely saving skill discussion for the next Baeclast. Since we've only had 2 of the new skills announced, if we wait for a bit for some more confirmed reworks and announcements, we can then have a more informed skill discussion then. PogChamp. So, start off with just a brief intro. What's everyone been up to? Let's everyone gel back into it. It's been quite a while since we've last done a Baeclast, so let's just all just sort of ease into the mood of things. And then we'll get Ziggy Darling to give a brief TLDR of the new League mechanic to catch everyone up to speed, maybe teach Rise some basic mechanics. You know how it is. It's a Baeclast. You've got to educate the plebs. We'll then go from that into everyone's first reaction, the things that we're most excited and most concerned about, like what are the main things we think will be the best, and then potentially the worst things. A very interesting discussion, I think, is how this league could push people towards or away from SSF, softcore, or hardcore. So as someone who mostly only ever plays hardcore, I'm actually very interested in playing softcore this time around, because this league seems to be way more favoured to softcore, so I'm going to go softcore SSF, potentially. And again, softcore SSF is Master Race. I've made a few videos on it in the past, but anyway, basically, I think that's an interesting discussion to have. We'll also briefly talk about one of the big problems I can see with Trade League this time around, with a bunch of people in the mines having to fight for checkpoints. I can imagine there'll be a whole lot of this player says BRB, 15 minutes, waiting for the next checkpoint, I'll then not sell you my ring then. So anyone who's ever had the woes of trying to trade with lab farmers, imagine that, but everyone is doing lab. I can imagine that being really painful. A fun little question for Ziggy, did people react to the league and his video as he expected? Since obviously he had, a lot of this info in advance. It's always really cool to see how people react to new announcements like that. It's a bit of a weird topic, but one very much worth having, is how we think new players will engage with the league, if we think this league could potentially be too overwhelming, and what are some additions that GG could make to make the league more approachable for people new to Path of Exile. Is an ever-expanding game. It's worth having these kind of discussions. So, how could we maybe use the advanced tooltips to make the new currency types easier to explain? With all the past leagues being flooded into the depths of the mine, are there any easy catch-up things that they could put in there so make it seem less daunting? Do we think that's even a problem? How will the actual delving difficulty scale from checkpoint to checkpoint? Is it going to be the difference between checkpoint 1 and checkpoint 2 is like a 2% damage increase with a 2% loot increase, or it'll be like a 50% damage increase? How can they balance the damage to reward increases in a way which doesn't feel either too slow and too tedious, or too rapid and lots of frustration and failed builds and all of that fun stuff? How do we think the league will work in early levels? We've had quite a few leagues which felt kind of underwhelming during leveling, and it seems like it could be another league which could be pretty dead while leveling, and only really kind of comes into fruition once you've got the properly working character, you've got your nice upgraded cart, and you've got all the fuel to go exploring. And then from that, we can talk a little bit about retention. I've made a few videos recently about retention and Path of Exile, how, potential for a hard mode was one video I made, an infinitely scaling mode, how maybe that could be something to fix the retention problem. I was told that I was an idiot for thinking those things, but apparently GGG kind of agrees with me. So do we think this could potentially fix the retention problem? Have we actually experienced it ourselves? Do we think there's even a problem to fix in the first place? From that, do we think Delve could potentially take the king place over Race to 100 for the competitive mode? Could this be the real way for the average dude to get into competitive racing, so to speak, in terms of Path of Exile? From that, on the whole racing discussion, leaderboard implementation is huge. It seems really obvious. Well, dude, you just have group leaderboards, solo leaderboards, it's all in game. What's the discussion? Lab leaderboards had come out until a few months after Lab was introduced, at which point most people stopped caring about it. The leaderboards were then implemented on a third-party website and is never mentioned directly in games, so people don't even know that exists. Will they make the same mistake again? That's fucking huge if they do. And then will the leaderboards have easy subcategories to search through? So will it have solo, duo play, then 3 to 6 man party? Will you be able to search for like top ascendancies? So you could be like, I am the highest solo raider, or I am the highest duo raider guardian, or whatever it is. Then, since Ziggy has actually played the mechanic, are there any like standout high RNG factors he could see messing up the leaderboard? So possibly different layouts, finding different resources, so on and so forth. On the whole group versus solo discussion, talking about how the consumables, the flares, and the dynamites, they seem to have a cap like of 10. How will that be distributed amongst the group? Will each player have a limit of 10? In which case, how could a solo dude ever compete in a group if they don't have separate leaderboards? Because a solo guy will have 10 dynamites and 10 fuses, and the group will have up to 60, stacks of dynamite and 60 fuses, which is a very slight, imbalance. An imbalance of up to 6, potentially, so yes. And then a bit of a meta discussion. We always see this thing where people always hold up, content to, well, how quickly did Uberdan do it? How quickly did someone do it on the first day? Do we think that having these kind of leaderboards will further exaggerate that mindset? Or would the access to this leaderboards, having the ability to easily track your own progression, could this be the stepping stone to kill some of that toxic behavior and actually push players into the end game themselves? Quite interesting discussion points. Getting back into the raw mechanics of the league, we're going to be talking about the fuel and Azerite upgrades, how we think they will work. Do we think it'll be a point of contention or something which makes a fun and engaging mechanic? So the fuel-based system itself, it could have a very high annoyance rate. If it becomes a limiting factor and it becomes a real chore to gather, obviously that's a bad thing. How could GGG make it less of an issue? Is there an issue in the first place? Do we think we'll have a situation where, you can run 2 maps, get all the fuel you need to go and do a massive bunch of delving, or I have to run 50 maps, or 5 maps, or 15 maps? What's the real sweet spot to balance the delving to map time? Do we want to be spending 80% of our time in maps, or do we want to spend 80% of our time in the mines? Then just as a sub-question, will we get more fuel in the higher level content? Could you just do like 1 tier 60 map fully fuel app? Or will it be a case of you're purposely just running very short linear, like, I don't know, a ledge style layout, for example, quickly running, skip all the mobs, just pick up some fuel stacks to get back into the mines? Then the Azerite upgrades, will they have a cap to them? Will it be a Pantheon-esque system where you're ever progressing, ever upgrading your stuff? In which case, the leaderboards suffer more from a who slept the least problem, because if they never cap out, then it rewards people who play the most, not the people who have the best build, or the most skill, or the most currency, or the most gear, or whatever. And then, do we want these upgrades to be account or character-wide? There are arguments to be made for both. Talk about the car AI/speed. A lot of people compared this to Endless Elrion Mission League. Since Ziggy's played it himself, does he think there is real issues there? Where do we think the sweet spots are for crawler speed, so on and so forth? Then talking about, since we have a few MF boys on the episode, do we think we're going to have an issue where just going full MF Sextant Tier 16 maps is going to be way more profitable, and you're going to have a lot of people actually not engaging with the league at all and just doing pure MF shenanigans? Talking a little bit about the return of reliquary keys, some of the new currency stuff. And then finally, in terms of the major topics, talk about whether or not we should be buffing skills up to Arc or Ellie hit or nerfing them down. Skill imbalances will always exist in Path of Exile, but it's mostly not really mattered too much. Obviously, it kind of sucks when one build can do everything a lot easier, but with infinitely scaling content, then you have, well, these are the only 2 builds which can do it and everything else can't, so it becomes kind of relevant. So do you want everything kind of brought down, everything brought up? Then how do you balance PoE? If the delving is going to be infinitely harder than everything above world, do you balance around above world or below ground progression? Because if you buff everything up for below ground delving progression, then it makes the core game absolutely trivial in comparison. So that's kind of an interesting kind of discussion on the whole notion of buffs and nerfs and player fun, etc. And then finally, it's Baeclast. We always go crazy off topic, but I think a bit of a fun little mini conversation to have is we have a new WoW expansion coming out in a few days from now, and the raids will unlock within a few days of the Path Exile league launch. Do we think there's going to be a issue where we might have massive player-based surges or spikes based on the WoW content? Obviously, you're not going to cancel development because other games are doing things, but a new WoW expansion is kind of a big deal, and WoW and PoE do share quite a similar player base. So it's just an interesting little what-if discussion to sort of have. So yes, again, Baeclast will be tomorrow on my Twitch channel. Time will be in the description. If you go to my Twitch chat, type !Baeclast, you can get a timer there. Anything you think we have to talk about, leave it down below. And we're purposely saving skill discussion for the next one, outside of the whole buffs and nerfs things. But yes, I am Tarke. That is chat. Thank you for everyone who used your Amazon Primes, by the way. We've gained a fair few subs over the last few days. Yes. Have a good day. See you all tomorrow. Bye-bye. Bye. See ya. Woohoo. I really wish I'd pressed stop recording earlier. Ha!